This is going to be a long one. What's up, you scumbags? Second Coming of Jesus Christ, Dr. Cross here. We're going to go ahead and continue looking at the Mysterious Mr. Enter's review of The Legend of Korra Book 1. As I said, that first hour-long video, that was the smart half of his review. I made it about 15 minutes into his 50-minute video, and it continues getting dumber and dumber and dumber. Strap yourselves on, it's going to be a fun one.
As I said, Korra is a series that punished me the more that I paid attention. The more that I wanted to know, the more pissed off it made me. Every time that I watched Korra, I noticed more and more things wrong.
Okay, so I feel like this might just be a repeat of some of the points that I made in the last video, but you never actually go on to tell us all the things you noticed wrong.
The biggest hallmark of this is in the first episode. After an admittedly nice prologue, we're immediately set off with this line. In my experience, there's really only two reasons that you'd write that line. Either you have way too much confidence in what's to follow, or you have absolutely none at all.
Or it's the mysterious third option, you patronizing dickhead. It's that it was a joke, and that they were using that to help define her overconfident character.
It's become a common meme by both fans and detractors of the episode. This is because, in classic Avatar fashion, there's a lot of subtlety in this one line, especially if you're fresh off of the original. You see, in the original show, they literally said that it took years for the Avatar to master all of the elements. Aang, described as a prodigy, and someone with the pressure of an ending world and an oppressive regime, took months to learn all four of them at the age of 12. Korra knows 3 out of 4 of the elements, like the back of her hand, with no issue. At 4 years old.
Alright, and here is where you are yet again wrong. See, Korra knows just enough to cast the smallest aspects of fire, water, and earth. She basically firebends as well as Zuko did when he lost his mojo in Season 3. Aang was a prodigy, yes, but Aang was a prodigy in spirit bending and air bending. He was a prodigy in accessing his avatar state. He was a prodigy in his manipulation of the spirits in the spirit world. He was a prodigy in his ability to astral project. He wasn't a prodigy in that he was able to firebend, earthbend, and waterbend. And if you buy into the idea that the Avatar has the spirits of all the past Avatars inside of him that are constantly helping that, and if you buy the idea that the Avatar has all the past spirits of past Avatars inside of them helping them, whether or not it's visible, then it would only make sense that each new generation of the Avatar would become stronger than the last. Aang was stronger than Roku. Roku was stronger than Kyoshi. Korra is stronger than Aang. It only makes sense that as your lineage grows older, you gain more power because of it. Also, as soon as Aang found out that he was an Avatar, he immediately ran and forgoed all of his training. It's clear that the parents knew that their daughter was an Avatar from a very, very young age, so they had aid for her, and then Tenzin and the others found her. It's not a very big stretch of the imagination that she would have the very foundation for the 3 physical elements. And I find the way that you're using your wording here sort of misleading. See, you start off by saying it took Aang months to master the 4 elements, right? See, the key word here is master. And then when you describe Korra, you say that she's able to use the 4 elements at the age of 4. And if Aang had been found out to be the Avatar when he was 2 years old, then I'm certain that somebody would have shown him how to do this stuff. A couple months is not actually that long of a time to master all of the elements. If Aang could go from knowing absolutely nothing about the other elements to being a literal master of the other 4 in less than a year, then once again, there's nothing saying that this young Avatar wouldn't have the ability to shoot a little fire out of her hands and shoot little pebbles around. You're completely over-exaggerating this point. Now granted, the whole "you better deal with it" line was kind of funny, but in the wrong way. The memes were hilarious. I'm not saying that there isn't anything else going on here. I'm saying that what you drew out of it is not what's going on here.
If you look even deeper, there's the subtlety of what the elements are. Korra can bend fire. In fact, she bends so much fire that it might be her signature element. In the original, you're gonna hear this a lot, so you might want to get used to it, but in the original, it said that the element the Avatar would have the most trouble with was the element opposite to them. Aang was an airbender, so he had trouble learning earth. It's opposite in the cycle. The opposite of water is fire.
Because it's not about the opposite element on the fucking Pokemon table, it's about the opposite element from the personality that you have. The first one also addressed how your personality also ties into your bending skills, especially for an Avatar. Korra is sort of a firebender. If she had been born as a regular bender, she probably would have been born as a firebender and it would have fit very well. Fire is not her natural element. She just so happened to be incorporated into the water element this time. So she was born as a water elemental person. The person who was literally a couple minutes ago going on about how they're using hypnotization on the cops in like Ba Sing Se style. You sure do seem to believe that the avatars should be exactly what they're born as. Your element does not determine your personality. Your personality determines your element, as far as the avatar goes.
Why is Korra having such an easy time with fire? I mean, I know why. Because Aang was good at air from the start, and we want to do the exact opposite of Avatar.
No, that's not why they did it at all. In fact, Korra having firebending is an extreme attention to detail. See, the legend of Korra, for all of its faults, is very tight with its continuity. I already explained, she is so excellent with firebending because of her fiery personality. Ha 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 ha. And also, if we had seen her start off as just a waterbender and then have to go on her journey to learn all the 3 other elements, it would literally just be the exact same thing that we saw for 60 episodes in the original series. Sure, you'd tweak it and have some variations in the adventure, but it'd be the same plot, and you'd be complaining about that. They're not just trying to not do the first, they've created a new character, and then using the rules set in the Avatar universe to the T, they assign the elements she was good at, and the element that her specialty was.
The original series goes all over the world, so in this series we're going to stay in one place, no matter how interesting or uninteresting that location is.
That is not the opposite of what the original Avatar did. The original Avatar settled in places for long stretches of time. Do you remember Ba Sing Se? Legend of Korra had an idea, it had a story, it had a setting, and it had a plot arc. And then after that plot arc in that setting was done, they begin going on their worldly adventure. You're complaining that Book 1 spends too much time in Republic City, which is a massive, gigantic city, twice the size of Ba Sing Se, exploring the 80 years of change in the Avatar series? Or did you want them to go on another road trip starting from episode 1 so you can just see the exact same things you already saw?
You have to remember that this is the first impression of the show, and first impressions are important. The very first impression of The Legend of Korra is that the sequel series is going to disregard what was established in the first one, but not only that, it's going to be abrasive about it, specifically to be different than the original, regardless if or not that would make it a worse product overall.
That is just not why they did that whatsoever. Seriously, how patronizing do you have to be to these writers to constantly tell them that their reason for doing things is the most absolutely simplistic, ass-backwards possible reason for doing everything? See, to the people who are watching this show, that original scene introducing Korra actually told us what her personality was going to be and showed us bits about how the character is going to function. And it showed us that she's going to be an overconfident character who has to overcome her own cockiness, as is a pretty common trope, to be honest. The first impression was that the joke was kind of weak, it could have been worded better, but it otherwise served its purpose in a multitude of ways. You are right, that one line has a lot of subtlety, and it goes to show and establish a lot about her character. It does not establish that the writers decided, oh, we're just going to do this just to make it different. Because as we'll get into this review, I will explain to you all the reasons why they did not try to make it different, and in fact, they actually kind of fell back and made so many things just like the original Avatar that it actually kind of hurt the series overall. They didn't go different enough. So you trying to sit here and be like, oh, their only reason for doing anything was just to be different, they had no other ideas in their head, is just about one of the most dickish things that you can possibly say.
Forget the first series. Korra is the Avatar, and you gotta deal with it. Of course, if you want to play with words and get super technical, they did say that it wasn't strictly the order of the elements that would make it difficult for the Avatar to learn their opposite. It was their personality that determined this. Alright, sure, let's play that game. Korra should have difficulty bending water, not air. General Iroh, the original General Iroh, went over each of the elements and their defining attributes. And spoilers, the guy kinda knew what he was talking about.
Alright guys, I want everybody right here to sit here and watch exactly how this guy misconstrues and misinterprets every single thing that Uncle Iroh says right now.
According to him, water was the element of change and air was the element of freedom. If there's something that Korra had an exceedingly hard time doing, it was change. Her main arc in conflict was fearing the change brought by Amon, and the possibility of losing her bending. Freedom was also something fairly important to her.
You know what? I don't even just think regularly saying you're wrong does it at this point. I think I need to do a little bit extra to say you're wrong right now.
Wrong!
The freedom that Uncle Iroh is talking about is not freedom of the body, it's freedom of the mind and spirit. Freedom is an abstract concept, which is why it's closely associated with airbending. See, it was because Korra didn't have the freedom of her mind and her spirit that she was unable to even recognize that there was a problem in Republic City. The lack of freedom of her mind and spirit is why she was unable to access the avatar state or talk to previous avatars or control air, because her mind wasn't free enough to think of it properly. She thought of everything as what was exactly in her face. She was able to shoot fire because it's a very in-your-face ability. She shot earth because it's a down-to-earth, strength-based ability. She was able to manipulate water because she wasn't averse to change. In fact, she actually helped pioneer change. She helped stop the people who were trying to destroy it. It was her lack of spirit and mental freedom that caused her to make the problem in Republic City even worse by escalating things, because she didn't even believe there was a problem. Her mind wasn't free enough to understand that she could be the bad guy here. She didn't even believe the non-benders had a point. That wasn't change. She wasn't adverse to change. She would have loved seeing things change and to help non-benders get places in the world, but she didn't believe it was a problem because her mind wasn't free enough to know it, and her spirit wasn't free enough to listen to the wisdom of previous avatars to understand it. She had no problem with change. She was regularly the one in the series to run away to get some change. She left the fucking water temple to get a change to follow Tenzin. She left Tenzin's care to go see the goddamn fire ferrets, and then while she was seeing the fire ferrets, she joined their team on a whim. She was not afraid of change. She was unable to access mental and spiritual freedom. Again, did you watch the show, dude? Or did you just read the fucking Wikipedia plot summary? Also, the thing you were complaining about earlier, that little test that Korra had to do to try and learn airbending, was literally all about embracing the freedom of your body to move like a leaf with the wind. Did you completely miss that entire lecture? And if you really, really do believe that the whole she was against change thing was because she was against the shifting of power, then I would argue this from an ethical perspective, right? If you take the corrupted power out of one person's hands and then move the corrupted power to corrupt somebody else, transferring it to another person's hands, leading to the exact same governmental system, but with a different oppressor, that is not change.
But she was born as a waterbender. Wouldn't that be interesting though? A little girl growing up in the water tribe. Her peers start waterbending, but Korra is unable to, and as such she gets teased, forcing her to start showing off more and more without bending. But the teasing doesn't relent. Then one day, Korra gets so angry that she ends up bending fire. It's then told to her that she's the Avatar, and at last, she finally feels special. She puts a lot of stock into this, and it becomes some personal issues that she has to deal with as the series goes on.
No, that doesn't actually sound all that interesting. That sounds like a Stephen King novel using every single Stephen King trope in the entire book. That sounds like the kind of story that the nostalgia critic could play the drinking game with. That is not a very good story. You know what that story boils down to? Haha, you were picked on as a kid, but guess what? You turned out to be special. Now you're going to save the world while solving your personal problems. You know what that would turn the Avatar into? Do you know what Korra would be if she had that personality? She would be Naruto. You're literally saying you want to watch Naruto the Avatar series. Naruto the Last Airbender. Naruto the Legend of Naruto. That cliched story has been done so many thousands of times throughout all the different mediums that no, it really wouldn't be that interesting to see again. In fact, seeing a young lady who's confident from the very beginning, is confident in her looks, is confident in her fighting ability, and believes that she's a powerful character, and then uses her confidence to try and do good in the world, I think that's a much more interesting story. I mean, too bad Korra fucked it up. But still.
To tell you the truth, looking back, I see so many more possibilities with Korra having trouble waterbending instead of airbending. Sometimes the most interesting possibilities are not always the most obvious one.
That is the most obvious one, which is why getting bullied is literally the go-to guide to try and build a sympathetic child character. Nearly all female protagonists start off as the wimpy little baby who's insecure about herself and isn't very special and constantly doubts herself. You're literally trying to say, become as absolutely cliche as possible and follow every single trope in the book. Wouldn't that lead to so many more possibilities? Once again, for example, Naruto did that, and Naruto is the grand fucking mashup of all cliches.
Sure, Aang started with airbending, and they were probably afraid that they couldn't make airbending more interesting. But, using the choices that they did, they took a lot of interest out of the series.
But only to you and a small group of other people. There's a reason that Legend of Korra is one of the most popular cartoons in the world.
The journey is more important than the destination. I care more about Aang because we see him grow as a person and grow more powerful as things goes on. It's harder to get invested in Korra's arc because she already starts out powerful.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with a character starting off powerful. Once again, if we had to go through Korra learning every single element and traveling around the world to see all the different masters while advancing her plot, it would just basically be the first series but with a slightly different overarching plot. And I'm very glad they didn't do that. And also, I'm going to give you a small list of extremely successful titles where the main character starts off powerful and you can still identify and grow with them and they still grow as characters, much like Korra did. We have Hellsing, we have Yu-Gi-Oh!, we have Ronin Kenshin, we have Bleach, we have Cowboy Bebop, we have Trigun. The list goes on. Having powerful characters is not a negative to being able to get invested into a character unless you don't understand how storytelling works.
This kind of works if you're going for like a Shakespearean tragedy kind of thing, which they almost went through, and we'll get to that much later. But no, in the end it comes as Korra knows everything but airbending because Aang knew airbending and nothing else.
Hey! Someone get me a dead horse! He's doing that thing where he's talking down to the writers and being a pretentious cunt, but he's actually the one who's being a fucking retard and doesn't have a single coherent point! Nah, but it was just because Aang did it, right? You know, when I started doing this series, I tried to say that I wasn't going to use any ad hominems, but you know what? I'm kind of glad that I did decide to start using them because you are so incredibly fucking delusional. You are absolutely insane. You will seriously sit here for a 50-minute video talking down to the writers as if they're children who don't understand how to put together a story just because you think your overly cliche done a billion times ideas are better than theirs. The armor's only here because it looks cool. The metal prisons make no sense even though they do. The entire Korra bit was stupid. She actually doesn't understand change even though the entire story would indicate fucking otherwise. You know what? I am glad that I started using ad hominems against you because this is one of the sickest, most disgusting videos I have ever seen a reviewer put out. I have never seen somebody genuinely talk down to an entire group of writers so harshly before. You're not even doing it with any sort of comedic edge. You're not adding in any jokes. You're not adding in any sort of fucking sketches or anything. You're just talking down to them. Fuck you, you piece of shit.
So this is how the first episode starts. And then the flying bison comes in. Last time I checked, Appa was the last flying bison, so I guess the flying bison procreate asexually.
You disingenuous cuck. You know full well that there's a perfectly logical in-world explanation for why there are still flying bison. But we'll get to that later. Because he does.
And then, Katara references Zuko's mother in a story for another time way.
It's so good to see all of you.
Gran, I've been reading all about your old adventures. I've been dying to ask you, what happened to Zuko's mom?
Well, Denora, it's an incredible tale.
Gran, you look old.
On its own, I could let that slide. But these three things happen in the first 5 minutes of the first episode, and they paint a very insulting picture when strung together. It's like, fuck you, we're changing everything established about bending, and you gotta deal with it.
I think you mean, fuck you, we're not actually changing anything established about bending and are instead following our own rules to an extreme T not seen in any other show ever.
Fuck you, flying bison are alive. Continuity? Who gives a fuck about that?
Yep, because just remember, what wasn't silly was the Avatar using his mystical spirit powers to seal himself into an ice ball that survived underwater with his fucking flying bison for literally 100 years without any of them needing any sort of food, nutrition, any sort of a jump start back to life, any sort of anything to keep your body stable, and also they didn't have bed sores. But no. There being a few more flying bison in the world that they just didn't know about? Total fucking botch of continuity. Because just remember, as we learned, every single thing in the entire world from bottom to top was established in the original Avatar series. They actually went to every single square inch of the world and overturned every rock, believe it or not. That was all part of why it was 60 episodes.
It's just a sequel. You want to hear about Zuko's mother? The only thing that we left hanging in the original? Well, fuck you. Buy our graphic novel. You don't get to hear about it here.
Dude, I'm pretty sure that was just meant as an in-joke for the fan base.
I know that it wasn't intentional here, but did they proofread this at all? While you need to have studied the original series to get why Korra's masterful bending at the age of 4 is a problem.
Yes, clearly clearly you've spent some time studying the original Avatar series, which is why you totally misinterpreted Uncle Iroh's words and did not understand that freedom meant freedom of spirit and mind. Truly, you are the sage on all things Avatar because you've watched it a few times and read a few wiki articles. Please teach me, oh kind and glorious master. And also, no, there still was nothing wrong with the way they did Korra. In fact, it actually matched continuity to such an extreme degree that it was ridiculous.
Watching just one episode, any episode of the original, can give you the picture that Apple was the last sky bison. He was often treated as a rare and exotic animal. This is why at one point he got kidnapped.
I imagine the ending to The Last Unicorn also pisses you off because turns out there are other unicorns that were hidden away, because clearly it follows the same logic. Well, the movie said it was last to begin with, so it should have been last to end with too. There should never be development.
To be absolutely fair though, there is an explanation for this later on in Season 2, in the stupidest way possible. The Fire Lord was keeping some hidden away from the world. It's a good thing Zuko never mentioned them, or Azula, or Iroh, and it's a good thing that the Fire Lord never considered them to be useful for the war effort.
Yes, it got retconned. That happens all the time in every different show. And no, Azula wouldn't know about them, Zuko wouldn't know about them, Iroh wouldn't know about them. The Fire Lord kept them in secrecy. If anything, this retcon retroactively makes the Fire Lord an even more interesting character. Despite all of his evilness, despite his war efforts, despite the carnage that he weaved, he was still genuinely a good person. He still valued the life of an entire race, and he was compassionate. He didn't want to bring the last of a creature into the warring efforts. This makes him a better, more developed villain. This is not a Jeff Johns retcon. This is a good retcon. I don't understand what your problem with this retcon is. It does help things. It helps everything. It introduces more sky bison to the world to help them rebuild as the series goes on, and it goes back and makes the villain, who was originally just a one-note boogity bad guy, into a more complex character that actually has a lot more deeper meaning than you might believe it has.
And it's not like we got to spend an entire episode with the Fire Nation's army trying to steal the secrets of flying warships. Guess that explanation didn't really help things in the end at all. The worst parts of when the show gets good is when they try to explain away the problems of Season 1 and 2, in a manner of, yeah, we were stupid back then, just don't worry about it. While it's a nice effort, it doesn't change what we actually have, and it doesn't help that the explanations are often shit. Yeah, we kept Korra locked away from the world, but that was for her safety. Point me to one piece of media, any piece of media, where keeping the chosen one hero locked away from the world has ever had any positive results ever.
Harry Potter. Dumbledore kept Harry Potter locked up in the Wizarding Tower instead of training him himself. This allowed Harry to slowly be brought up into the Wizarding world, to slowly learn about the dark forces that were going on. Even though Dumbledore knew that Harry was going to be needed to do it, he locked him away and he protected him until his final breath. And it worked, because Harry had the tools that he needed to defeat Voldemort. Harry Potter is the perfect example of locking the Chosen One away, helping them out. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief is another fantastic example of this. The mother locks away Percy and keeps him hidden until he's long enough to go to Camp Half-Blood and learn how to fight and defend himself.
You can't, because it doesn't happen.
Oh, okay then. Alright, well this is going to go ahead and conclude part 2 of my response to the Mysterious Mr. Enter's review of The Legend of Korra and why every single thing he says is wrong. I know that some of you guys probably did not believe me when I said that I disagreed with every single thing he said in a 50-minute video, and probably thought I was being hyperbolic and was going to pick apart his video. But no, I plan on showing his video in full because I disagree with every single thing he says from start to finish on a show that I hate. Cheers. Hey, Mr. Enter, do me a quick favor and tell me where in your video I can find something you say that's intelligent.
You can't, because it doesn't happen.
Talk slower like you're a retard. Talk slower like you're retarded. You're slow. No, wait, you're dumb.
Hey, I'm trying to film something. Move. Move. I want to film something. Move. Oh my god. Fine, I will do it from your direction then. Are you happy?